This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. I would like to call to order the Tuesday, June 20th meeting of the Monmouth City Council and ask for the roll call, please. Phyllis Bowman.
Councillor Belts.
Here.
Councillor Carey.
Here.
Councillor Lopez is excused. Councillor McKeel.
Here.
Councillor Oberst.
Here.
Councillor Salinas Oliveros.
Here.
Mayor Kunz.
I am present. And Councillor McKeel, would you lead us in the flag salute this evening?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Break off. Before we start the agenda this evening, I want to mention that tonight's meeting is focused on Monmouth City Council business. The general public comment time scheduled for items not on the agenda will be limited to 20 minutes. With regards to the issue of the possible siting of microshelters on the property owned by Christ Church, there have been some changes we want to announce and mention. There is increased focus on the Oregon statute that came out of legislation in 2021, known as House Bill or HB 2006. In that statute, governments such as cities and counties are required to grant applications to site emergency housing shelters that meet 6 criteria. That statute sunsets next week. However, the bill in its entirety is part of the new House Bill 3395, which makes those provisions permanent based on a data calculation of statewide homelessness. We were working with our local representative, Paul Evans, to get consideration of amendments to the bill to provide more clarity on the 6 existing criteria so that any decision under it could be made more transparently. Those efforts were not successful. The bill has been heard and voted on by the Joint Ways and Means Committee and is waiting to be scheduled for a vote by the full Oregon Senate. If Monmouth receives a qualified application to site an emergency housing shelter proposal under the new House Bill 3395, the city staff would review it to see if it meets the provisions of the law. As we have stated before, an emergency shelter supersiding decision is not a land use decision. Unlike the process for a land use application, the approval or denial of such an application under this law does not require mailed notices or postings and may be considered without a public hearing. When an emergency shelter supersiding application is submitted, or if and when, all the application materials and the decision on the application will be posted on the city's website. An appeal of a decision on an emergency shelter supersiding application must be filed in Polk County Circuit Court within 60 days of the decision. That is the only appeal available to the administrative decision. City Manager Marty Wine will give further information about this as part of her report, which I'm going to ask her to deliver now.
Thanks, Mayor. This part of my city manager report has several parts relating to the micro shelter proposal. The city has not received any application for emergency housing shelter. I've compiled the questions from the June 2nd town hall meeting and also asked the micro shelter project partners to help provide answers to them. I know it's taken us a while to pull together that Q&A. The city's going to be creating a web page that'll publicize this question and answers that have been submitted to us. I'm hoping that'll happen this week. Even with the limit criteria for review in HB 2006 and the fact that that review wouldn't be a land use decision, I know the council has committed to compiling public input and correspondence, and we're keeping a list of interested parties for notification if we get an application. We're going to be putting up two city web pages, hopefully this week. One would be to publish the answers to questions, as I just mentioned, and the other page would outline the super siting law related to emergency housing, application information, and a process that would be followed if we receive such an application. I was asked by the council to also report on a meeting that was held last week, June 14th. Last Wednesday, Chief Haynes, Lieutenant Olafson, and I attended a meeting that was requested by Christ Church, and it was convened by Polk County. The purpose of the meeting was to answer public safety related questions and understand the potential proposal for a micro shelter community site. The meeting was attended by all of the county's law enforcement agencies, Polk Fire District 1 Chief, and the project proposal partners. I would say, and I can name all those partners, it includes Polk County Family Community Outreach, Commissioner Gordon, the Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action Agency, and Church at the Park, and of course, the Christ Church folks who convened it. The purpose of the meeting was focused on answering the public safety agency's questions and working with people in rural Polk County who experience homelessness. The discussion focused on what is the micro shelter community. It also focused on a group discussion about responding to community safety concerns, what law enforcement agencies might experience if a shelter was sited in Monmouth. There was nothing about the meeting that had any decision related to it, and it was not designed to have the law enforcement agencies or the fire and EMS providers determine whether or how a super siting application would be evaluated. So that's my report about the public safety meeting. I know there's been some community talk about that meeting, and I just wanted to be clear about what happened at it. And finally, we've been continuing to get requests at the city for whether there is any city-owned property that could host the micro shelter project. And we're evaluating that question, and we'll continue to look at it. The short answer to that is no, I don't think we have any property of sufficient size or separation from our infrastructure systems to be able to help with siting that project. But if the question, if it becomes necessary to, I may ask the council to have a discussion about that together if we get to that point. We're not at that point because the decision between Christ Church and Church at the Park to partner together hasn't been made. So those are my updates about the micro shelter proposal.
Thank you. I will go ahead and we will return to our agenda. The first item just being the consent calendar. So we want to manage that. The minutes of the June 6th meeting were included. Were there any changes or additions?
I would move approval.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Carey, for the motion and Councillor McKeel for the second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And seeing none opposed, we'll make those official. For public comment this evening, again, we appreciate hearing from people that we have not heard from on the micro shelter proposal. And it does look like those, we have one comment that is potentially not about that. So I'm going to call up that person first. Bill Broward? Brownward, I'm sorry. Yes, please. That way, if you speak into the microphone, folks online can hear you better as well. Thank you.
I apologize for the handwriting that was on my lap.
That's my reading. And if you could give us your name and where you live, sir.
My name is Bill Brownlee, and I live at 521 Falls City Highway. And my question and comments this evening have to deal with the speed feedback signs I see coming into town from the north and from the south. Old 99 coming from the south and Riddle Road coming from the north. And I'm curious why we don't have one on the Falls City approach into town.
Go ahead.
Please.
And if it's a road authority issue with the state, I would request that the city is their latitude for the city to work with the state to get approval for that approach as well. And along those same lines, we sure would like to see a little more enforcement presence. And I know it's pretty typical to say I never see enforcement on my street, but I never see enforcement on my street. But I do see a lot of aggressive driving. People drive pretty fast. We've got some elderly neighbors across the street that have to cross the street to get their mail for the mailboxes. And they're not very fast crossing the street. And some people do drive pretty fast. So we would like to see some enforcement, except up for us, of course.
So we do have a traffic safety commission and they evaluate things like that. Councilor Oberst is nodding and giving input because he has represented the council on that commission for some time. And we won't get into the actual answers here. But also Russ Cooper, our public works director, is sitting in the back row and he helps staff that commission. So I see him furiously taking notes. But if you would like additional answers, perhaps Russ can answer them for you a little bit as well tonight. But we would definitely take that forward to the group that will list and
Thank you.
be able to do that. So
Okay.
thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming to
Thanks.
us tonight,
Thank you.
Bill. All right, and Margaret Richards, if you could please come forward and let us know where you reside. Hi,
Let you know what?
where you reside.
Oh, I live 298 Stadium Drive North. Okay, my parents were Ken and Betty Richards, and they built the neighborhood where Christ Church is wanting to shelter the 40-plus homeless on that empty lot. My parents were the ones that kind of came up with the idea for that church. They chose the Presbyterian church because my mom was Presbyterian back in Wales. And the play area where they said they didn't want anything else built in that area, that was the issue that was important to my dad, and that was part of the agreement. They wanted the neighborhood kids to have a place to play and to go to church, and Stumps owned the land, and our family and their family worked together to establish that dream to come to pass. Now Christ Church is planning to go against the people they made covenant with at the beginning. They want to dishonor the agreement. They want to dishonor the people in the neighborhood who made that church possible. I submit that sheltering these homeless in a neighborhood of residents who have invested in the homes and in their lives and themselves and their community is a complete opposition with Christ Church wants to do. At WU, I took business, and the first three things they teach you is location, location, location when you are thinking about developing something. The reason for that is that it's important where you put something. Marion Rossi, former mayor of Independence and former professor at WU, taught and believed the necessity of proper zoning. Rossi taught that you don't want to place an adult bookstore smack dab in the middle of a neighborhood, nor do you want it next to a grade school. It has negative ramifications that are pretty easy and basic to understand. It's just as true that you don't want to put a homeless drug use problem area in the middle of a residential area. Rossi taught you make it difficult for them to come in through zoning. Zoning is there for a reason. It's there to protect the people. I talked to Steve Mitchell of Christ Church, and I told him it wasn't a good idea. I told him my reasoning. He replied that it was just stereotypes of these people and that they would be a blessing to the community and it wouldn't be a problem. I told him he was wrong, but for the sake of argument, would he agree to be responsible if there were problems? His answer was no, it's not his responsibility, and suggested that they put cameras in and stuff. Yet at the same time, they are benefiting financially for that action to the sum of $60,000 per year. It may seem like a noble and righteous thing to do to help the homeless, but it's neither. It's not noble or righteous to affect people's livelihood, to affect their property value, to put them in harm's way, to affect their sense of security and safety, to make it their problem and to potentially destroy the neighborhood. And let me finish with this. They're saying that it's not their responsibility. If things happen, I declare that it is. You can't do an action and not be responsible for what you do. And I think that's the same for the city of Monmouth. I would also hold them equally responsible if we have problems in that area. So I'd like, you guys to kind of think it through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
David Lindley.
458 Sacred Lane, Monmouth. I'm just going to be really brief and echo those same sentiments. Living here half my life. Yeah, the site location is really poor. It's going to devastate not only the neighborhood, but I think it's going to divide the community. I think all of us involved in this discussion, will have to live with our choice. And it's going to change the dynamic of Monmouth, which has been a beautiful community for decades, especially that neighborhood. I think that neighborhood, growing up here, has produced a lot of quality families and individuals. And I just, it's the wrong location. I hope we can pump the brakes. And as a community, hopefully we can work with maybe an organization that has experience with a smaller community. I think Church at the Park is geared so far. I think they're fairly young in what they're doing, but it's more of an urban organization. And I wish we could slow down the process and find some organization somewhere in Oregon, because we're all having to deal with this. And hopefully we can find a better fit. Church at the Park, trying to get data from them, their transparency is really lacking. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. So I'll wrap this up. I hope as a community we can find solutions rather than forcing this bad plan that has not been thoroughly vetted. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thanks. And finally, Alex Slumbers.
Hi, guys. Guys, I'm here.
You want to state where you live?
I live on Walnut, and I don't want a micro shelter. So anyway, I live on Walnut and Clay. And I want to talk to you guys about time. It took 40 years to get those zone changes. It took you guys 3 years to get a report from a company that you guys hired, a professional company, to come in here and give you guys a report. We got 60 days after this thing is submitted, probably at the end of the month. We have 60 days to appeal that. And again, it comes back to time. I spent a lot of time there. I came back to the city 10 years ago. I spent a ton of time out there. It's quiet. At night, it's dark. I don't think I've ever seen any of you guys down there. We have 2 kids that came into town these last couple days, and they've been there a few days. I stopped by to help them today. I gave them options, and the very last one was, well, I don't want to sell my car because I can't get what I want for it. Neither one's insured. Neither one has a license. 3 cars, 2 men. Most things end how they start. And this hasn't started off very well. I think that if we get together, we can do and accommodate the homeless. We need water fountains. We need a place for them to shower. I have a son who's in a mental ward in the jail. He's coming down off meth. 20th day. In 6 days, he's going to qualify to live there. He's been on meth for 18 months. And a low barrier shelter in our little neighborhood in that dark area is not going to work. So yes, we do have to help the homeless. I help them, so I do walk the walk. And we don't need to do it there. I'm going to trust you guys to help us do the right thing. The last couple of weeks, I've felt nothing but anger from the minute I get up to the time I go to bed. I drive by the shelters in Salem on a daily basis, and it's the first thing on my mind, the last thing on my mind when I go to bed. My neighbors can't sleep, and the first house went up for sale today due to this micro shelter. Please take care of us. You know, we elected you guys. We need some help. Marty, help us. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Alex. All right. That takes us to our business agenda this evening. Oh. Oh, sorry, Phyllis has one. I forgot. She just popped on the screen to remind me. Thank you.
I did. So this is a comment from Tammy Stump. My name is Tammy Stump, and I live at 521 Falls City Highway, Monmouth. I am writing you today to voice my concerns about the micro-housing project that is proposed at the Christ Church Methodist and Presbyterian United location in Monmouth, Oregon on Clay and Stadium Streets. I am the 5th generation of Stump family to live and farm in and near Monmouth. In 1963, my grandparents, Darrell and Iva Stump, donated the land at Clay and Stadium Streets to the Independence Methodist Church to build a new church after the old one burned. I believe this location is not appropriate for a homeless housing project, and I believe this project poses a health and safety risk for the community. Monmouth is a community that has given so much to so many people from different backgrounds, abilities, cultures, and religions. However, we cannot shoulder all of the homeless burden in our small community. I know in my heart that my grandparents would not support the negative impact this ill-conceived project poses to our community. Thank you, Tammy Stump.
Thank you, Phyllis. Were there any other comments submitted, Phyllis, or anyone online identified?
There were no other comments submitted, and I do not see anybody online.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Right. Thank you very much. Now we'll get to that business agenda. And actually, we have a team presentation tonight because we get.
Well,
we would
this will
like
give you a
to
chance
hear
to meet our
both of you
finance
come
director.
up, and then we can have an introduction for those online.
I'd like to welcome Susie Marston, who's joining us this week, started yesterday as our finance director. And so welcome, Susie. We're really glad you're aboard.
Thank you.
Really glad.
And I just have to say, I have a special hat.
Oh,
Mine's down there. All right.
All
Well, we'll start off with our supplementary budget. And there will be a public hearing held, but I'm assuming you want me to present the staff report first.
please do, and then we will open the hearing.
So the supplementary budget is for fiscal 22-23, the year that we're currently in. And it relates to Government Accounting Standards Board regulations 87 and 96, which you've heard me talk about a fair amount. 87 being lease transactions that the Government Accounting Standards Board has now determined should be treated as debt instead of as service payments under materials and services. GASB 96 similarly requires us to treat subscription-based technology, subscription-based information technology arrangements, otherwise known as SPIDAs, as debt service as well. And so what that implies is that we need to identify all of those lease arrangements and technology arrangements and develop an implicit interest rate that is part of the cost of those items. But the net effect is that we pay the same amount because we've transacted that and we have budgeted for them, but just in the wrong category. So we need to create in the reason for the public hearing is that 4 of the funds do not have a debt service category. So we have to actually create a debt service category in 4 of the funds, and then we will move in 6 of the funds, we will move 7 of the funds, we will move appropriations out of our departments into the debt service category. And so that is the staff report in a nutshell. We did not know we did know that the implementation was coming for GASB 87 and 96, but with the delay in the audit last year, they were not identified in time to build into the budget. And so that is why we are bringing this to you at this time. And so we will be asking to move those appropriations and set that up for fiscal year end, before fiscal year end.
All right. Any questions of staff about these supplemental budgets? The Canadian calls them supplementary. I call them supplemental.
I do.
ahead.
I'm looking for the note here, but we did the same thing. This is a routine procedure.
Budget,
It doesn't have to be, we do supplemental budgets as
Yeah,
Americans,
this-
but
This is a little unique, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, it's not.
the process is,
Yeah, and so in 22, we went through the process and we transferred.
in that case, we did do contingency appropriations because again, we weren't at the point where, in that case, I was guessing really high, to be honest, because we had not yet identified all our lease arrangements. And I didn't want to take from appropriations that I wasn't sure were going to not be needed for other purposes. So yes, I used contingency appropriations in 22. And in fiscal 24, we shouldn't have to do a supplementary budget, a supplemental budget, because I've built it into the actual budget this year. So, but it was just because of the timing of the implementation is what created the havoc for these two. Well, one of the things that created the havoc for these 2 years for it. So this year, I have identified that the materials and appropriations, or materials and services appropriations are going to be adequate to just move the amount of money that we were planning to spend on these particular items to the debt service category.
So we took it from contingencies a year ago.
Correct.
This year, we're going to take it from what was otherwise appropriated.
material
Correct.
supplies category to the debt service category. Those are different.
Of course, yes, yes,
Yeah.
but we'd allocated and is that a general materials and services, or are there items that we're not going to procure or purchase in order to pay for them?
No, these items were already budgeted under the materials and services in the departments.
Okay.
And that was the same the previous year, but the problem was, again, just knowing where we were in the year, I didn't have the confidence that I had identified all the leasing arrangements at that point and wanted to be a little bit fiscally prudent. And since the contingency appropriations are there for that purpose, I could have done the same thing this year. It just would have increased the budget, and I didn't want to show an increase in the budget.
I was only trying to protect some other item.
Oh, yeah, no,
might
there's
have
not,
been- Yeah.
nothing will not
Nothing
be
like that.
bought that was previously
Okay.
contemplated.
So it's kind of like you filed these in the wrong file folder and it's just moving it to the correct file.
According to GASB, yes.
Okay, good. Got it.
All right, seeing no other staff questions, I will open a public hearing on the fiscal year 23 supplemental budget and transfers. Is there anyone who would like to submit comments about that? Seeing that, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion. Go ahead.
I move adoption of the resolution 1969, a resolution approving transfers and supplementary budgets for the fiscal year 2022 to 2023, and directing the finance director to make appropriate entries.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor McKeel for the motion and Counselor Oberst for the second. Any other questions pop up?
I do have one note to make that I had actually asked to have corrected, but it was not corrected in the resolution itself. Under Power and Light Fund, it should be the Power and Light Department, not the Public Works Department. But it is possible that your resolution that you will sign, if it passes, should have the correct, should have the Power and Light Department under the Power and Light Fund.
I will look for
I
that.
see it.
It has been corrected.
Excellent. See, she's all over it.
All right, seeing no additional questions, Phyllis, roll call, please.
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor Belts,
Yes.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor McKeel.
Agreed.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. And that takes us to some of our annual policy reviews.
So I will commence. Thank you, Madam Mayor and councilors. I will commence with the annual fiscal policy update. And I'm recommending a number of basically housekeeping edits this year to the policy. The first one, and all of the edits are on pages, so page 6 and 7 of the policy, but page 22 and page 23 of your packet is where all the edits are outlined in the track changes. And so the first of these edits is to bring into alignment something that I missed last year, bring the fiscal policy into alignment with the compliance provisions under the investment policy. The state dropped the language of conformance with federal, state, and other legal requirements out of the investment objectives, and they moved it up into the area of the law, which makes a lot of sense. And so this just mirrors essentially what the investment policy says. And so that was a little bit of housekeeping. Additionally, as I read through the capitalization policy, I thought it was a little on the vague side to say the historical cost of a capital asset includes the cost of the asset, because that doesn't really tell you what it is. So cost paid for the asset, as opposed to maybe any other kind of cost, such as replacement cost or such, is what our policy is. And then moving on, the last change is on page 23, and it is just again a little bit of clarity around how we select our insurance. We don't just look at the risk, but we look at the coverage and weigh that with continued operations and how to best maintain that and we also consider premiums. So those are the only changes I'm recommending this year for the fiscal policy, but I'm open to other suggestions or questions that you may have in that. And we have a requirement to annually readopt the fiscal policy with or without these changes.
At her doing all this housekeeping before Susie has to start. All right.
I would move approval of resolution 1970, which readopts the City of Monmouth fiscal policy as modified.
I'll
Second.
Oh,
I will
we're going to
defer
yield
to
to
Counselor
Counselor
Salinas
Oliveros.
Thank you.
Counselor Oberst, thank you for the motion, and Counselor Salinas Oliveros for the second. Questions? Counselor Carey.
Because we're transitioning here, a couple things that I just like to sort of maybe we don't need more definition, but I'm wondering if we don't. Page 19, operating budgetary policy. Item D, it talks about revenues be estimated by objective and analytical process because revenues are sensitive to conditions outside the city's control. Estimates will be conservative. What do we mean by conservative to a new person taking over this?
Do you want
Position.
me to tell you what I think conservative is? Or?
And I think we have a working understanding of what that is. But if not here, then, just sort of in that transitional piece, we may want to be talking about that. But for the record, what's conservative? What does that mean?
Well, I can answer. Thank you for having me here tonight. So conservative to me on the revenue side means that we budget in a way where when we actually receive the revenue, we should receive more than what we budgeted. So my practice in budgeting is pretty conservative in that way. I don't want to get in a situation where I budget, let's say $200,000 of a certain revenue and we only bring in $150,000. So I want to, look at past actuals and just do my best that way. That's pretty much.
That follows practice.
Exactly. And the only thing I would add to that is also the expenditure side, we tend to be conservative as well. So the idea being that at the end of the day, our bottom line will be higher than what we budgeted for.
And that's worked well for us. And the last one, and I didn't even really know this was in there, and I got reading it, number E, just click down one. Ongoing expenses should be covered by ongoing revenues. Does that preclude us from using reserves?
It does not. It is the key word there would be should. And that's why it's phrased so conservatively. And so, as you know, this year for fiscal 24, we have our ongoing expenditures are budgeted to actually exceed ongoing revenues slightly. But we anticipate that we will use some reserves, or we will end up having higher revenues than we projected and lower expenses than we projected.
Good. We need to do that. We need to be able to do that.
Exactly.
I just don't want sure Susie's not a real literal reader of that. Should is a good one to have there. Yeah. Good. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, Phyllis, roll call for resolution number 1970, a resolution amending the fiscal policies for the city of Monmouth.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor Belts.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Right, and our investment policy.
I'd actually like to beg the council's indulgence to move to the risk management report first. I was going to try and get that reordered, but that didn't happen. So I would like to do that because it falls under the fiscal policy that we bring it forward. And so that is on your page 37 of your packet. And so this year we did a few little changes. But it does look very much like it has in prior years. I still have not gone out and hired somebody to do it because I feel that we can do it pretty well affordably in-house and give you some really good results thanks to the excellent data collection that CIS, our City County Insurance Services, provides us. And so I wanted to start out by highlighting, I'm sure you've all read it like a love letter, but the first paragraph under the highlights is that we had the best practices survey, which is done triennially. Our Katie Durfee, our CIS rep, came in and did an assessment, and we moved up from a ranking of 59% of best practices, achieving best practices, to 86%, which I think is a reflection on your excellent department heads and your excellent city manager who have tried to, tighten things up a little bit. Also, our training regime has always been very good. And, part of it, I think, was also that maybe CIS, when they came through last time, we were in transition between city managers too. So they may not have gotten the full picture, but I do think that there has been some improvement that's worth noting. And hopefully we will see that in our premiums when we get them next month. So you will see that in some of the categories of our property liability that we had one or two incidents again, which is very normal. What I'd like to draw your attention to is the graphs that are produced by CIS in our membership data. And you will see that we continue to outperform in every category, similar sized cities, as well as the full CIS city pool. So again, this speaks to very good safety practices, very good training. All of our new employees do both sexual harassment training and cybersecurity training, and then the folks that are in the field are getting very important trainings from police and public works and power and light. And this year, we added a little bit more interest with some pictures of some of those trainings, as well as some highlights of the trainings that were done and a little bit more verbiage on that. So we thought that might be of interest. In particular, it's happening, I think, tomorrow. And Chief Haynes is online if you had more questions about it, but there's going to be an active threat training exercise tomorrow that will be really interesting to see how that goes. But again, we're just trying to assess all of those things. And in particular, I still want to highlight that cybersecurity is one of those items that we are paying a lot of attention to and trying to stay on top of to the best of our ability as we see more and more hackers doing things to more and more people. And so with that, I would take questions on risk management.
Yes, Councilor McKeel.
Yeah, as actually as I was looking through the trainings, I thought what we don't seem to have is an anti-bias, anti-racism training.
We do that, and I should put more of that detail in there. You're right, but
Okay.
we do that. In fact, CIS has some excellent anti-bias training that was rolled out again this year, and they update them well.
Oh, good. So
Yes.
that training is going on.
It is.
Oh, okay.
yes,
Because it's
yeah.
like, I was like, oh, wait, but that's part of this and part of that. And it's like, okay, great. Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
To other trainings that aren't listed here that might not be considered part of the typical risk management profile. So,
Well, except if you look at active threat training, having a person of color, I mean, we can just pick up a newspaper just about any day and see how that impacts, how we are thinking where the threat is. So I think it is very much part of
yeah,
risk management.
in CIS's, their
Yeah.
definition of it. So when they send us all the charts and graphs. Yeah, that was great. And yes, thanks to our partners, not only the active threat training exercises that will happen tomorrow at Central High School and potentially at other school campuses. It will be a drill that will attract there will be a lot of emergency vehicles. Folks need to know it will be a drill. So, but that's great. Any other questions about risk management? That's pretty significant improvement. Good job on the best practices rating. That's
Actually, I do want to say
Oh.
yay. That's a lot of good work.
yeah, that is. That's the non-glamorous stuff. All right. So readoption now investments.
Yes, and so for the investment policy this year, you'll recall that last year we did quite a big update on it to bring it up to par with the more recent templates that the state provides. And so including updating language and clarifying on some definitions and so forth. So this year, I'm not proposing any additional changes. I do know that interest rates are rising, and we are, now that Susie's on board, I'm super excited to get the safekeeping account set up so that she can get out there and buy all kinds of good investments that are prudent and yet have better yield. The LGIP is up above 4% now, the local government investment pool. So, again, it's not like we're losing money, but I think that we could go out to the 18 months that's envisioned here and still do very well, because a lot of the higher yielding instruments are fairly short term still. So that's the good news. I left it to Susie for next year if she wants to look at going out further. Once you do go out past the 18 months, though, you have to go through a much more rigorous vetting process by the state of your policy, and so it's just more time consuming, and it's not like there's nothing else to do in our jobs, but that's kind of why I decided to wait on that. And I do think that we can still do fine in the short term with some good improvements in our interest earnings.
Yeah, anything more than 0.015 or whatever the LGIP was a year and a half ago at this time. Any questions about the investment policy? Okay.
I'll move approval of resolution 1971, which readopts the City of Monmouth investment policy.
Second.
Second.
I know, I'm going to give it to Councillor Carey there.
Yeah.
So thank you, Councillor Keel for the motion and Councillor Carey for the second. And Phyllis, roll call, please.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor Belts,
Aye.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Oberst.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And moving right along. we now have, well, we have a couple of things here, so.
Right. So I'm excited to bring to you an update on the ARPA spending, the American Rescue Plan Act grants that we received, totaling over 2.35 million. We have now, as of April 30th, for our reporting period, spent 770,324. And I have to apologize because the attachments didn't get into the report, but I will make sure that you all see those and we will post them online. But there was an attachment that was the annual report that I filed with the state by our deadline, and also the prior years are not. The memo that Marty put together in 2020 and your city manager put together in 2021 was to be attached, but all of you got it, I think, at budget committee. So hopefully fairly fresh in your minds. And so highlights, of course, is that we are making inroads on the well spending. We're about half of the dedicated funding for that has been spent to date. And we've spent about 108,000 on infrastructure, communications infrastructure, radios and telephones that were sorely needed. We've done a lot of good work in community and human services response, primarily through our Polk County Family and Community Outreach, the FCO group, and they are very successfully utilizing those funds as we've heard before. It's been very, very impactful, I think. And then as well, your community and economic development director has been doing a wonderful job of doing some economic development impact work with business recovery assistance, technical assistance, and marketing. And so with that, we have spent close to $35,000 in that area. We will be doing a little bit of redeploying because some of the needs have gone away, but of course other needs arise. And again, because it is one-time money, we're really trying to focus on using it for one-time needs and projects so that we don't become reliant on it. As you know, that's something we heard from Budget Committee. And so I think that we have until December 2024 to obligate it, and December 2026 to actually spend the dollars. And it's considered under our threshold, it's considered fully obligated now, our 2.35 million, because we have it in specific categories. And that's all that they're looking for under the general lost revenue category. So I would welcome questions if you have any, and Marty may want to offer up anything that I may have missed.
I'd just like to put in my 2 cents for the security and remote virtual audio visual equipment for the new city hall as being a really reasonable place if we do in fact wind up with some additional funding. Security for sure, and then also being able to do proper audio visual for council meetings, et cetera. You know, I can go back to, it's probably 15 years ago now, Pat Henderson used to do Independence's council meetings. He had experience through Salem's PEG channel, and he did titling and multiple cameras and all that from a single control panel sitting at a table. And that was 15 or 20 years ago. And we ought to be able to put up a much more professional, not that Zach does anything but a wonderful job, but he has got one camera and no auxiliary equipment, and see if we can't get, you know, a really a better product out and plus take care of those security needs. So
Yeah, that would meet our accessibility goal, right? To have folks.
No,
be able
exactly.
to
Yeah.
have better access to our meetings. Okay, and Councilor Carey?
Leave it to Obers to always be looking for the better camera angle.
John, when you look at this,
You-
man, you
you're
got
on
to
that.
do everything you
You're on
can
that
to
all the
improve the
time.
outcome.
I have a couple. One, as I would echo the security piece, if we got an extra 50,000 there, it looks like that'll be reallocated. And if it doesn't go to water related things like was initially thought, you know, I don't recall where we came down on, with all of the iterations of the new city hall, where we came down on our employee security piece, lockable doors, shielding, whatever sort of that is. But, you know, that was something that was sort of a priority. Well, it wasn't sort of it was a priority early on, but as, you know, as things began to
Value engineer.
yeah, well, even before that, we got to that, there was some, we got to be careful about how far we go. Let's make sure we've got a structure, et cetera. So that would be, I would join John in saying that's my, would be a good thing. That's a administrative function, obviously. You know, from my perspective, I'd be interested to know how we sort of end up with that as by way of report, from an interest standpoint. More substantive, though, Janet. It sounds like the second half of this, and I didn't fully understand it, but rather than be more specific in the items that we were expending this for, now we can categorize things as revenue replacement.
Lost revenue, yes. And that has to do with the ARPA grant rules.
Right. And so what kind of flexibility does that give us?
A lot of flexibility. So the threshold is actually $10 million. If you were they're called non-entitlement units, but basically a city or county that received less than $10 million, you can claim that whole amount under the lost revenue category. And that's effectively what I've done in my reporting schema because it requires a lot less reporting.
Right.
I did have, you'll see that we spent $7,400 on a temporary grant coordinator for a while. And that person was able to help quite a lot with getting us organized and systematic. But the problem is that we couldn't afford to pay her ongoing. And so we've brought that back in-house, but with this simplified approach, it's really not a huge burden to report on it this way. And that way we are still tracking it very nicely through our financial system, and we can tell you what we spent it on, but we don't have to, you know, fit the very stringent criteria under, say, some of the other categories that aren't lost revenue.
That's great. And you know, we have a number, especially where we're at right now, vis-a-vis the city hall. We've got a number of one-time expenditure items. We've got some infrastructure things, one-time expenditure items. So that's great. I was hoping that was going to be your answer. And the final thing is that while it was our hope and our intention to spend that on one-time expenditure items, we do have a fair amount of money going to our resource navigation center. Does that really fit that one-time expenditure category?
If it stops after, it would, but I'll defer to Marty on this.
I think that we have an agreement with Polk County that says that the city and both cities, Monmouth and Independence, are going to fund the resource navigation services for this first 2-year period. And the agreement acknowledges that at the end of that 2 years, there's not an obligation on either city's part to continue our contribution. But I would say we know that at the end of the 2-year period, figuring out an ongoing source of funding, if it's going to continue, would need to be done.
Well, so that has fit our obligation for the agreement that we had. And then should we decide to go ahead and go forward with that, we're not obligated because of the 2 years that we've done before. Exactly what I was hoping. Very good.
Pretty much we all know, we're all looking at these monies and saying, we need these services, we need these things, and we know it's going to be hard to continue them in the future with budgets looking the way they are for all public agencies, school districts included. Tough decisions ahead, but everyone's going into it with the exact same constraints. Other questions? That is a report and not an action item, so we will dismiss Marty, and thank you so much. And Marty, not going to dismiss her, she stays. Janet, thank you, and Susie, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. It's great to see you. Look forward to working with you more. All right, and now we have the fee stuff. Janet just moves the money around and Russ brings it in. So here we go.
Certainly hope to.
Russ Cooper, our Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mayor Coots and members of council. What I have before you tonight is Resolution 1972, and this resolution would increase our system development charges by 12.73 across the board. The increase is based off of an index, the Engineering News Record Building Cost Index. And this year, it shows that the average cost of construction materials and labor has increased by the 12.73%, and that is specific to that index uses 20 cities across the U.S. and selects 3 products, cement, 2x4s, and structural steel. And then the labor component that they compare is both common labor and skilled labor in the construction trade. So that's how they determine their indexing. Back in 2011, council adopted Resolution 1735, which allowed for this indexing. In that resolution, it stated that if the percentage increase was greater than 5%, that needed to be to go greater than the 5%, that needed to come before council for a decision to do so. In kind of the history of this indexing, it's averaged between 2 and 2.5% up until the last 2 years. Last year, it was 10%, and council moved to implement 10%, maybe it was 10% and some change. And then this year, we have the 12.73 for consideration. The fiscal implications or the financial implications for new development for a single family home, it would increase the system development charges, which are for, the impact to the water system, sewer system, stormwater, parks, and transportation system. It would increase that by $1,665. That would take basically system development charges for single family up to $17,000 in total. I think that is most of the detail I intended to share. I'm happy to answer any questions along this.
Yes, Councilor Carey.
You said the indicators were things that they looked at were 2x4s, concrete, and was it labor?
Structural steel and then
steel.
labor.
And then labor on
There's a
top of it.
percentage of the labor is common labor, and then a percentage of it is actual skilled labor.
Yeah.
That's that Engineering News Record Building Cost Index, not something we make up. So,
Right. Well, I have empathy for this, but I'm also opposed to the number. And while I don't doubt the validity of the number, I think the number is transitory. We're on the tail end of an inflationary time, impacted dramatically by supply chain problems, COVID related. While I don't think that it's all completely temporary, it's not going to be, it was 10% a year ago and it's 12% this year. We're looking at a 23% increase in SDC charges in 2 years in a time when we are trying to build affordable housing. And it's a real conundrum. And I've been thinking about it all day. Because on the one hand, we want to protect ourselves and to be able to invest as we need to with our SDC funds. But on the other hand, we're driving the cost of housing up. And we may be using numbers that are sort of a bubble. I don't know that. I'm not an economist, but that's just the sense that I have. And I want to remind council that this 23, if we go this way, 23% over 2 years is baked into the formula ad infinitum.
Right.
New base, yeah.
Yeah, and so so if it's 5% next year, then this is always with us. And so to me, the impact on the cost of new home construction or new housing construction outweighs the slight difficulty that it creates for us in our accumulation of SDC. I mean, that's just my own values. I'm concerned. So, you know, I mean, I think it's got to go up, certainly. I mean, I'd be happy with 5% or something like that. And that's arbitrary, I understand. So anyway, that's my 2 bits, and I'm ready to get whacked. Overs. You come.
John, I would never, go ahead, Russ, you have something to throw.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, SDCs are always a conundrum for me. They came about because people objected to developers coming into town, putting in new houses that loaded up systems and didn't really pay their way on the systems. And so those of us who lived here had to pick up the costs of expanding the system for the developer's pocketbook. And so SDCs were created as a way to have development pay its way in the expansion of systems like transportation, sewer, water, and parks. That's the big 4, right? There aren't any others. As far as I can recall. So
Water now.
yes, it adds cost to the house. It absolutely does, because that house is going to burden the systems once it's here, or that apartment house, or that shopping center, or whatever. It's going to burden the systems, and we have to have a way to handle that increase in burden. Yet, John, I agree with you that 23% in 2 years, and you know this is 13% with that 10% already baked in. So
Compounded.
so anyway, it's troubling, and to hear that 17,000 of the total cost of a house is going to be SDCs, that seems really high. And then I look at the prices of the newer houses in town, and they're going for $500,000. And maybe 17,000 isn't all that much. But then again, those are big houses, and we want to talk about affordable houses. This is the what, you know, I've been wrestling with this today. Just kind of going through all those things. And I think I would share your thought, John, that there might be a number that's less than, what was it, 12.73. I think it's more than 5. But that might be supportable, because I also agree with you about the possibility of this being primarily a bubble. You know, we had an incredible run up in timber prices at the beginning of pandemic. That bubble has kind of burst. 2x4s are in there, yet concrete's not getting any cheaper.
Our experience is that actually the materials that we are using in our industry are actually, we're seeing costs that are higher than the 12%. And our increases in our projects are actually ranging closer to the 20% higher than what we estimate, what we anticipate. And so while the index is a good kind of broad brush stroke of what to expect, it also doesn't dig down deep into the localized area or the specific trade that you're dealing with. So the 12%, the 12.73%, even if it is a bubble, what that means is that if costs come down over the next few years, that this index will reflect that as well across the next few years, and those should level out. The other is that when we redo our capital improvement plans in a particular fund, that should reset what the dollars that we need at that time, And then that particular fund would start over through the indexing process. Now, it may actually go up if our capital needs are greater than what we need today, or it could go down. So that doesn't, I suppose, bring any comfort to the concern at hand. And then with affordable housing, my concern is that when we take these projects that are driven by development and transfer that over to the utility ratepayer and increase their utility rates, that we push more people into a state of financial difficulty. And my goal is to always keep our rates as low as we can keep our rates and still provide, safe, affordable drinking water in a quantity that meets our needs for today and into the future. And so when we place the burden of new, folks that are coming to town, when we place that burden on our existing ratepayers who, Councilor Oberst was right in that,
That's fine, Russ.
that current ratepayers have paid for the infrastructure that is here today, and there is a need for the new development coming in to pay at least their fair share for the increased demand on the system.
I'm going to take a
I
second,
have a question when you.
if I can, if Councilor McKeels, Councilor Salinas Oliveros, Councilor Belts, if you have thoughts. Councilor Belts?
I mean, I share the concern about, it seems like such a huge jump. And there's optics involved, and we always have to consider how does this appear? I agree with both Councilor Johns, that it seems necessary, but it also seems really concerning in terms of how that looks when we're trying to encourage more housing starts. So I don't know what the answer is. I'm very conflicted.
Councilor McKeel? And then Councilor Salinas Oliveros?
So maybe I'm missing some of this, but could you go into more details about how you came up with this 12%? So I know that you're talking lumber's higher and all that stuff, but you probably have a bit more that's under the surface of that.
So the number, so taking a step back, when council looked at this back in 2011 as a concept of indexing our SDCs so that they kept pace with the increased inflation, there was the desire for a standard index or indices that was used in order to base that increase or not increase over time. And so what was selected at the time and what made was the most complementary was Engineering News Records Building Cost Index. And that building cost index takes, an average of a number of cities throughout the United States. So it's kind of a national index, and looked at some of the components of the building trade or the construction trade in order to establish how is the cost of construction impacted by inflation over the past 12-month period. So that's how the 12.73 is derived. It's
Your published rate.
published increase in construction
For
costs.
example, saying we're going to use the consumer price index for West Coast cities means price of eggs and bread and gasoline and things like that. So finding some other measurement that's out there and probably has been around for 75 years or something, right? So they have this track record, but they are looking at components that affect this instead of eggs and gasoline. So that's why I remember the discussion, right? You can pick different things. This one is an industry standard because it looks at construction materials
So if I could
and labor.
if I could follow up. So even though we're like, wow, this is going to really impact, as we look at affordable housing, experts in the industry say this is a good estimate of what it's going to cost. So we can be disappointed and we can be like, wow, we shouldn't do this. But the reality is this is what the costs are going to be.
As Ezra said, and I know sitting on the Finance and Administration Committee of Western Oregon University, 20% is low of increases in construction materials and labor. Right now, all estimates are coming in much higher than that. Marty, you probably have specifics about
When we
the
talked,
City
the
Hall.
last City Hall report that I gave the council talked about that being one of the contributors to what's happening with our costs on that project, which is they're running well above 12% and more in the 15 to 20% range. I guess I would also mention to the council that in the world where you're weighing some of the trade-offs about the burden that new development might share or what can be done to incent affordable housing, certainly making your SDCs lower is a way to make that cost less, but there might be other policy approaches that the council can take and incentives related to affordable housing that don't have to do with the cost that SDCs contribute.
Councilor Salinas Oliveros, comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is really great discussion, and thank you for having it. It's helping me kind of build the picture of we kind of have to, regardless of what we want, what we see, what we hope. The fact of the matter is everything is costing more. I think of our housing report and how we have a rent crisis. Well, everything costs more. So you have landlords who are trying to come up with that as well. And then you have, 30% of costs going to housing, according to our report. I worry about the families and individuals on the edge, 1 to 2 paychecks away of, not having that payment. So, and yes, we can create policy, and there's maybe incentives and other things that we can look at. I hope that these other things that we look at, whether it's policies or incentives, doesn't just break even. It doesn't just make up for the cost of the SDCs and then we really don't get a whole lot out of it. I think at this point, regardless of how it looks and how we want affordable housing to be, and we do have to look at policy and incentives and other options. If we don't do this, Russ, if we don't do this, I'm thinking of this, we're eventually still going to have to pay more or make up for that. Like, how is this? Because if we don't do what the experts are telling us, 12, and it sounds like to me that 12.73% is on the lower side of what everyone else is adjusting to, 15%, 20%. But I don't think that at this point we have a choice not to do and take the responsibility of paying for, all the materials that are costing more. Because I can't imagine what it would be like if we say, well, you can only have 5%, you can only increase it by 10%. And then where does that leave us? And what, I think we end up back here with, Mr. Cooper saying, hey, we don't have enough. Hey, we can't do that. Hey, something else has to go. I guess, and maybe I'm being naive in how I'm presenting that, but that kind of, we either do it now or it's just going to come back and bite us later, I guess is how I'm thinking of it. And we need to really think about ways to improve the affordable housing and keep working towards those policies, incentives, and really brainstorm and come up with some creative ideas, because we do have, a rent crisis and families who need us to look at that. But that's kind of where my thoughts are tonight.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. And reminder, these things lag as well, right? So next year, even though the consumer price index is leveling and smoothing, this could be like this again, because it will be reacting
It's
to
a
these
very
20%.
different breadbasket, if you will, than
It's a
eggs,
very
and
different
milk, and
bread basket, shopping
I hope-
cart, or
Right,
whatever we
thank you.
call them in
Better shopping
economics.
cart.
Yeah.
So if I could, just a couple of quick things. I think part of the answer to Rebecca's concerns about if we lower the SDCs, then there's not enough money. As Russ said, then you turn to the ratepayers and ask them to pay higher rates to make the extra, to make the improvement that has to be made to the system. And that's where SDCs came from in the first place, was to keep the ratepayers from having to pay higher rates to do the thing that we have to do because of growth. You know, so it used to be, before we did this indexing, that we would have an SDC for a certain thing, and we would
6
hire a
years or
consultant to
7
come in
years.
and tell us we need to raise it, and it'd be 40% or 50% in one go because we hadn't done it. We had a transportation SDC, but something like 12 years between times that we did it. And when we proposed raising it, we had developers in here. It was in the 2008 recession saying, well, we can't pay that. And so we put it off. And did that serve the ratepayers of Monmouth well? Probably not, but certainly, you know, it was a really hard time in 2008, 2009, and we respected that for the developers. And then I'm wondering, you know, we talked about incentives and so on. Is there any way to defer SDC payments for a new house, to say to the developer, you don't have to pay the SDCs up front. When somebody purchases the house, they can pay those SDCs over the course
That's
of
what
5
we
years.
talked
Is there,
about in our housing protection
right?
strategy.
And
That's-
are those things exist in state law that we can have the ability to do that? I'm just sort of laying out a scenario of how we could conceivably soften the blow for the moderate, low income housing that we've said we're interested in stimulating while maintaining the system as it is. So,
I think state law is actually going to address more of that than less of it in the
No,
future.
I'm sure.
It's
I'm sure.
coming down the pike, but
so,
yes.
so that's all. These are just my additional thoughts
Sure.
that as I listen to my fellow counselors.
Counselor Carey and then Counselor Belts.
You know, I one of the things that we don't know is we don't know when this was done. You know, when they pulled that data. If we pulled data on the price of eggs, you know, 3 months ago, we'd have a far different number than we have today. So so it's hard to know, probably, and it's hard to know where it's, you know, where those 20 cities are from. If they're all in the south, it's probably way too low. If they're in the northeast, it's, you know,
Off the charts.
conversely, it's the reverse. If it's in the south, it's probably way too high. If it's up in the northeast, it's probably, or Seattle or somewhere like that. But, you know, I mean, one of the answers to what do we do if we don't do this, you know, we just wait a year. We wait a while. And, you know, the accumulation of the SDC dollars is just slightly slower than it would have been had we gone, or, you know, with the 23% over 2 years, 12.7 this year. So, and I want to remind us that while this is the index that we go to and appreciate and did it and open, you know, and chose it with open eyes, the consumer price index that we use for our for our non-represented employees was considerably higher than what we ended up funding. That was 7.5, if I recall, and there was a 4%, I mean, round numbers, but we adjusted that based on, in that case, fairness to other represented employees. You know, one of the things, and that's why I'm glad we have the deal where we've got the threshold, so we can have the discussion and make a conscious decision.
Right.
If this is approved, then it's a conscious decision to take this number and apply this to every system development charge ad infinitum. This will never go away. And that's why I'm for, you know, looking at maybe it isn't 5, but a 6% or something like that. I'm not going to necessarily propose it because I haven't gotten any real sense of support for that. But we can make a difference, make a different decision here. That's why we have it set as we do.
I'm going to let Russ and then Counselor Belts.
One thing that I didn't mention in the staff report is I did a little dive into our regional partners, Salem, Dallas, Independence, and we are either less than or comparable with our SDC costs as our regional partner. So we're still
We will be with this,
with this, yes, with this.
as we
They're
know,
probably
for
doing something
example,
similar.
Well,
Independence did a much larger increase.
Everybody is experiencing this in the industry. It's, at least in the Northwest, and I'm assuming it's a national issue as well.
Counselor Belts and then Counselor McKeel.
Well, actually, Counselor Carey brought up the point that I was thinking of, is that we've adjusted this voluntarily in the past. However, that's why we have these conversations, right? To hear the whole story, because kind of once I got a bigger picture, again, it's a struggle. The other thing I do see though, is that if I remember right, we've made whatever it was, a tax credit or an adjustment or an SDC adjustment in the past for some larger projects. And so obviously the potential is there to do that, but we don't have any of those programs in place. So if we don't do this now, then we talk about building all those programs so that we know what they look like. And that's a challenge too. So that's doing what we used to do in the city of kick the can down the road. And now we're all dealing with all the consequences of kicking the can down the road. So again, I'm conflicted.
Yeah. And a reminder that with the SDC deferrals or waivers, I mean, that we've offered in the past, we made them up from urban renewal dollars. So
Yeah.
we didn't give them up totally. We just moved money around. Janet, do you want to speak to that also?
I just wanted to add, we do actually have a 10-year lien loan process where we have offered to developers, Carl's Jr. being one in point, and more recently a house development that was going to be beyond their budget. We give them the opportunity to pay over 10 years every 6 months, and they can prepay at any time without penalty. So that is in a state law that we follow.
That's laudable, but and I'm glad we do it, but it's taking away revenue for us. Well, but
It's deferring revenue.
deferring revenue. Yeah. So the immediacy is not as critical as it may seem if we're able to do that. And again, I'm really glad that we do it and hope we do more of it. So it's not like we're dead in the water if we don't take it to 12.73.
I would entertain a motion at this point. Counselor McKeel.
I'll move, make sure I'm on the right page.
You're on the right page.
Okay. So,
You
I-
are on the right.
Yeah, thank you. Both, yeah, never mind. Okay, I move to approve Resolution 1972, approving a special index-based cost increase to sewer, water, stormwater, parks, and transportation system development charges by 12.73% for the fiscal year 2023 to 24.
Is there a second?
Yes, there is.
I'll second.
I'll give it to Rebecca.
All right. Thank you, Counselor McKeel for the motion and Counselor Salinas Oliveros for the second. And Phyllis will do the roll call on the 12.73 amount.
Counselor Carey,
No.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor Belts,
No.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-2.
Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you for the great discussion. And yes, let's all keep working on this. All right, we now have some other fees to consider. and Suzanne Duffner, our Community and Economic Development Director.
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Suzanne Duffner, Community Economic Development Director for the City of Monmouth, here to present a couple of reports this evening. One is related to a new land use fee for what we refer to as parking determinations. This is a new type of land use application that was approved through our recent code update. So it's known as a type 2 land use review, and it's the proposed fee is $300. That would be similar to our other type 2 land use reviews. This is done by staff administratively. There are no additional changes that are proposed to the fee resolution at this point. We did make adjustments last year after quite a long hiatus in adjusting those fees. So the new fee is shown in red underline in the attached memorandum. There's a resolution 1973. We have a couple of alternatives there of either approving the recommended new fee or setting an alternative land use fee for that. And there's a sample proposed motion at the bottom of the staff report, and I'm ready for it.
Right, questions? Councillor McKeel?
So, Ms. Duffner, could you explain what the recoup costs associated with processing parking determination requests? Are there some details about what those costs are?
Yeah, sure. So recouping the staff time it takes to process one of the land use applications. So for a type 2 review, that means doing the initial application intake and review for completeness, setting up staff file, sending out notice to adjacent property owners within 250 feet. So there's a little bit of postage mailing costs. And then, of course, the staff time to prepare written findings and a report and a decision that gets sent out to the applicant.
Follow-up question. So do you have a kind of it might change for what the application is, but do you have an estimate of like how many hours of staff time that would be?
So this is a new application fee, so I don't have a sense yet for what those will be. Like I said, it's a type 2 review, so tried to slot it into what the most similar type of application, like a minor variance. We don't do a lot of those, so unfortunately I don't have a ready-made number spreadsheet to be able to say this is exactly the average number of hours it takes to process those. But yeah.
So the $300 is associated with similar work, which is why you came up with how you came up with the $300.
Yeah, we have 4 different types of land applications ranging from ministerial to a legislative decision. So they all have a different review process as outlined by our codes and state statutes. So yeah, tried to slot it into the fee schedule that looked the most similar in terms of the general activities, staff time to review those. And we'll certainly monitor that as we go forward. And if it looks like they take a lot less time, then we can, adjust that downward. Most times we're lucky to break even, honestly, because there's some generally more coaching that we do for applicants to try to help them navigate that process and provide good customer service. So, but yeah, if it looks like conversely they're taking a lot more time, then we can always, look at updating that. We usually try to do that every 5 years or so. But since this is new, we'll keep an eye on it sooner.
So just for comparison, looking at floodplains is $500. That obviously seems to be quite a bit more complicated. Looking at a conditional use permit, double this amount. So this seems comparable to the lot line adjustment, to the minor variance, to a lot of, or some of our historic reviews. So it seems to fit sort of. All right, other questions for Suzanne? And as noted in the staff report, the other fees are staying the same? Is that correct?
Yeah, we do also in our ordinance have a ability to adjust those per the CPI, and we can adjust up to 5% by staff. So we will be making that adjustment July 1st. I didn't propose going all the way up to the 12.7% because we have just did a land use fee update last year. So we had a chance to do a significant increase at that point and felt like those numbers are still pretty comparable for us, at least in the planning realm.
Great. Since this is labor-based rather than materials-based.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not taking the full CPI that we have basis on.
Right.
Councillor Carey?
I would move to approve Resolution 1973, approving a new land use fee for parking determination application.
Second.
Second. No, I did the second.
Councillor Carey, thank you for the motion, and Councillor McKeel will get the second on that one. So Phyllis, roll call, please.
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor Belts,
Yes.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor McKeel,
Agreed.
Counselor Carey.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you. And we have some building permit fee consideration as well.
Yeah, so Resolution 1974, it's before your consideration this evening, is a resolution to adopt a new, what we call a technology fee for the building department fee schedule. This technology fee is proposed so that we can help recoup costs associated with the technology that it takes to move to doing more electronic plan review. So purchasing things like tablets and to be able to do work inspections out in the field, and larger monitors, computers that with enough processing to be able to handle the larger files. The technology fee would also be able to allow us to recoup the fees for credit card processing. So there's a 3% charge anytime a credit card is used to pay for building permit fees. So currently we cap the amount of a building permit that can be fees that can be paid with a credit card to like $1,000, so that we don't get hit with a really huge 3% charge on top of that the city has to eat that fee. By implementing this 3% technology fee, that will help us recoup this so we can open up that credit card processing for all amounts. Like it wouldn't be limited to just building permit fees less than $1,000. So it would really increase the convenience of being able to do business, as a lot of people expect to be able to pay by cards these days, it seems like. So they're pretty common. The State of Oregon's e-permitting department has a little one-pager that I attached that talks in more detail about the technology fee and what expenses that it can be used to help the building permit department stay whole for covering the cost of doing electronic plan review and credit card fees. This fee schedule update is solely just the 3% technology fee that be added. We're not proposing any additional changes to the building department fee schedule at this time, although the last time it was updated comprehensively was in 2018. And we did not, to my knowledge, do any increases, even though we were authorized to do a couple of 3% increases. We didn't implement those because we had historically pretty healthy reserve in that department. But now we know that it's starting to cost more, and we'll be monitoring those fees and probably be coming back in subsequent year to look at some potential increases to the other fees. But at this point, again, we're just looking at adopting and implementing right away that technology fee. There is a sample, or there's a a resolution 1974 that's attached in your packet and a proposed memo there. And I would be happy to answer any questions you might have about that.
The Larry Thornton Memorial Hold the Building Fee Study Resolution. All righty, Councilor McKeel.
I thought, I thank you for the addition of the Oregon whatever paper that was there. That actually cleared up a lot of questions I have. So I'd like to just go ahead and make a motion. I move to approve Resolution 1974, approving a new technology fee for building permits.
Second.
Second. Oh, go ahead. You take it. You take it, Councilor Belts.
Oh, we're giving it to Councilor Belts. Thank you, Councilor McKeel, for the motion and Councilor Belts for the second. Any additional questions? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Belts,
Aye.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Oberst.
Yep.
Motion passes 5-0.
So I have one question, because the resolution, actually, the title of the resolution, which we move to approve the resolution, which approves the new technology fee, but it actually establishes a schedule of fees to be paid for certain building department services, which is
Incorporated in each of those ensuing pages. So the adoption is part of those schedules.
so just that the title of the resolution is not the same as the motion. I'm not sure if we need to restate the motion.
I would restate the previous motion, and instead of do I need to read the title, or can I reference the title of the,
I'll read the title into the record if you
read the
can
title into
reference
the
it.
record, please?
Resolution number 1974, resolution establishing a schedule of fees to be paid for certain building department services and for plumbing and mechanical permits, and repealing conflicting resolutions.
I second that.
All right, I'm just for the heck of it, I'm gonna go ahead and get
We got both.
the vote to get the additional language, which now includes a new technology fee. So Phyllis, do you need to take the roll call again on that?
I would consult the city attorney.
I wasn't going to put him on the spot. I was trying to figure it out.
We're just changing the title. I don't think for something that already passed.
Right.
I don't think we need a roll call.
Okay, no roll call,
Just clarifying the title and
clarifying the
Right.
title and
So-
making sure that everybody understands that in addition to the new fee, that this actually is a repeal of a previous fee agreement that didn't include it. So, all right. Everybody okay with that? Yes, all right. That is the end of our fee stuff. So thank you very much, Suzanne, for that. And
Thank you.
we'll let you go. All right, our next order of business this evening is actually, oops, sorry about that, our reappointment of board and commission members, something that we look at annually at this time. We have several options here, and I would like to remind council we have made a commitment to do a more of a, first of all, more recruiting, trying to get new folks in as these boards and commission terms come up, give new people opportunities to serve, but also to review applicants for the budget committee and the planning commission in more depth. And so tonight we have several appointments to consider, and I'd like to put forth the following suggestion. I would like to suggest that we reappoint the applicants for the Arts and Culture Commission, the Library Board, the Senior Advisory Board, and the Traffic Safety Commission as presented. Those commissions, we don't typically go through the interview process, and those folks have agreed to serve an additional term. Appointments to the Budget Committee, I would like to go ahead and wait on those. Obviously, their term, although we could call upon that at any time, it is not likely that those positions will be needed to be filled before January. So if we want to review those, get visits with those folks, see if there are any additional applicants, I would like to hold off on those reappointments specifically. And then the Planning Commission, same thing. Typically, we would like to interview folks, even returning folks. We've sort of made a commitment to get a little bit more information from them. Unfortunately, because we are doing this rather late, they have a meeting on July 5th. We do not have a meeting on July 4th. So if we do not reappoint the continuing folks, they would not have a quorum.
No, they would not.
And they would actually have business to conduct on the 5th. So because of that, then, unless others have some way around that, I would suggest that we would reappoint the 4 existing planning commissioners to their seats. We do have an application for a vacancy on the Planning Commission. That position is not needed to fill a quorum, so I would like to put that one off a bit and see. We do have that vacancy still advertised, potentially, hopefully, if there are other candidates, and whoever applies, we can do that interview process that we have established for the Planning Commission vacancy only. And then we do have 2 applicants for the Tree Advisory Board.
Which will give us a quorum.
Which will
finally.
give us a quorum.
It's kind of a fun story because we had the father, Daniel Hedrick, move up the street from me. He grew up in Salem, went off for a career in the Air Force, moved to Monmouth, and a house went for sale down the street, and his son bought it. And I approached Dan, the father, and said, Dan, we have an opening on the Tree Advisory Board. Want to be on it? He said, sure. Next thing I know, his son's applied too.
Oh.
So all in the family.
There we go.
Yeah.
So I reviewing those applications, we could consider both of those for appointment as well. And I do want to take this opportunity. Patty Dixon is not opted to continue on the Planning Commission, and Beth Beard-Leeper on our Budget Committee would leave a vacancy there. And really appreciate their service because, as we know, those committees very technical, take a lot of time, and really want to thank those 2 for their service.
Madam Mayor, I would like to follow your suggestion and move reappointment of all of the existing commissioners, with the exception of the 3 Budget Committee members, so that we could have that opportunity to engage in some conversation, and also the 2 new applicants to the Tree Advisory Board, but hold off on the new Planning Commission position for now.
Thank you, Councilor Oberst, for the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilor McKeel. All right, other thoughts? I'm open to other ways to maneuver this.
I think we're in a little bit of a box with the planning, but now there are 1 or are there 2 positions open on plan?
So there is 1 current, and then Phyllis says additionally, if all appointments are made, we would still have 1 additional opening on the Planning Commission, I believe. So I think we have 2.
Yeah, that's what I was
We
thinking.
have 2.
So, one of our things that we wanted to do, one of our goals is to recruit what I'd call different, diverse folks. We've not been lucky in that, or not been successful in that, but since we have a little time on both of those committees, we take the opportunity to do that. So I concur with your suggestion, I guess is what I'm saying, and challenge us all to begin to recruit, and we've got a process for both. and go to some of the members of those committees and ask for who might be good.
Right.
Who do they know?
And this is not the first time we've run into this time compression at the end of the year. And I would suggest that it's time to move our reapplication date to mid-April, early May. It's got to be in, we need to see them in May, not
Phyllis and I
last
tried to
meeting.
do a little bit of that this year. We actually also looked at changing the application for all returning commissioners to focus more on their reflection on their time on the commission.
That's good.
and Sort of what things they'd be
Right.
interested, rather than just the same old background information we have. So we did not get that implemented in time either, and I'll take that on. Phyllis, your comment on that?
I just want to clarify that there is only one vacancy on the planning commission.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Not two.
My comments stand.
Okay.
Mhm.
Other thoughts? Rebecca, Roxanne, anything? All right, all in favor of the slate as presented, if everyone knows where we're going on that, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great, and seeing none opposed. Councilor Oberst, did
I said,
all right.
I said a very quiet aye.
I heard him. He kind of whispered.
I'm like you.
There's-
All right,
there's the wind.
thank you very much. We will get those folks and our budget committee members. We will be taking time to interview those. And if we had any additional applicants for the planning commission, people might be interested. Let's get those applications in, and I will take a couple of folks from our council and we'll go through that process that Councilor Salinas helped me develop to do a sort of a matrix of how to review those applications and try to get that planning commission filled up for them. Thank you for that. All right, council goals.
Thank you, Mayor. and
It's
Council.
June.
It's June. And I think that, thank you for your patience while you had other things on your agenda, but you all participated in our council goal setting that happened in February. We produced a report for you with goals and strategies in March and April. So the report that you're seeing tonight in staff report starts, the goals report starts on page 71 of your packet. At the time that we all met together in February, we set goals and priorities for the city. Our consultant who helped facilitate, Sarah Singer Wilson, put together a report, and together with staff, we added some strategies about how we would carry out these goals over the next 2 years. And so what you have before you tonight is a report that I'm hoping the council would affirm by motion, that these goals look like and the strategies look like the things that we are going to undertake. And I know that seeing that it's June and you've adopted a budget for the 2024 fiscal year, you saw a proposed budget that had investments and the beginning to implement these goals, and where departments were working on activities that would align with these goals. So hopefully there's nothing in here that's a surprise or contrary to anything that you thought we would be doing. But I was hoping to just be sure that our final council goals report was before you, and that it aligned with what you would like us to be doing for the next and investing in for the next 2 years. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, I think, again, we mentioned at the time, and we have mentioned since, a little bit of a luxury to do some 2-year planning, right? That without having to sort of reconfigure our goals and ideas, but really continue the work we've been able to do. I thought this was, and it's a cool, pretty report in addition to being very detailed. I appreciate timelines and things like that we've been able to add to it. Other comments or questions or specific things that caught your eye in reviewing the product? Councilor Carey.
It reflects really my recollection on all of it. I do have a little question on the timeline. We've got 1 year. And then 2 to 4 years, I'm just looking at goal 5 because it happens to be up. How are we treating those what does 1 year mean? Like,
Starting when?
well, it'll start in January, July. So then hopefully we would conclude that in a year or make significant progress toward.
Right. I think that the way we were looking at the timeline was you can kind of tell if you look across all of the goals that the 1 year, the shorter term goals and things that we were thinking would be achieved in the near term or the upcoming fiscal year were the ones that we labeled 1 year. And there are some that we acknowledge because the timeline says ongoing or 4 years that we also recognize it will take longer to follow all the way through. So yes, I would read this report to say if a timeline says 1 year that we're reporting back to you at this time next year about hopefully substantial achievement or completion of those goals.
And so then when we think about progress towards those goals, I'm looking at the attainable housing opportunities, goal number 1, 2 years, and then we got a couple of 4 years, but Suzanne is not like laying around waiting for, year 2 to get by before she's going to get to work on it. I'm assuming we're going to be working on those, but because they're more longitudinal, then we can still get reports as they go, albeit, perhaps brief in the beginning, but there is work on those. We're moving towards those even 4 years. Just sort of editorial on that, but yeah.
That's correct. It's our intention to bring you, as I understand it, you were getting quarterly reports of goal attainment prior. And it's our hope that where these have either plans to develop or we're showing progress, that we're giving you a regular report of there might be programs to develop, in particular in the attainable housing opportunity area, which I think you've pointed out. And so that would be the first thing that we would bring you, would be to talk about what is it that we're actually going to do within this goal, and then start to report on how we're doing on achieving it.
Yeah, and I don't know about anybody else, but when we got the previous goal reporting, percentages didn't really mean a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
Because they were
Weird like
arbitrary.
that.
More was the narrative.
Yeah.
This is where we're working on, this is what's happening, rather than 38%.
Yes, and Sarah Singer Wilson and her team helped to put together a reporting structure that hopefully is simpler and in a narrative format, so that we're reporting on progress and less artificial.
It's- Marty has admitted to struggling a bit as to how those percentages were arrived at and what did we do with that information? I couldn't frankly tell her.
It was a dartboard.
It was
If a motion is necessary to do away with percentages, I'm prepared to put.
0% and 100% were the two that stood out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Marty, I noticed that we have a 1 year goal on complete City Hall, and if that starts July 1st, we will be done.
Easy.
Yeah,
I know, I'm
I
teasing.
can say that with pretty good certainty.
You can. I'm tickled to hear that.
And you'll be ahead of the goal.
Right?
Yeah. Look at that.
But 100%.
Other comments, Rebecca, Roxanne, anything that?
I just wanted to say this is a really nice put together report. Thank you so much for your work on this. And I'd love to go ahead and make the motion if we're ready for it.
Please, go ahead.
Okay. I move to approve the city council goals for 2023 through 2025 and direct staff to recommend resources to carry out the goals and strategies in the fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25 proposed budgets.
100% second.
Thank you, Councillor Salinas Oliveros for the motion and Councillor Belts for the resounding second.
Brief comment, and that is I've been through more than a few of these goal settings for council, and this is the best outcome, the most illustrated, and the sort of it really, it feels like a real set of goals that are achievable and concrete and all that good stuff. So I appreciate the effort on finding this facilitator and bringing us this facilitator. It was good stuff.
And I too am 100% in agreement with that.
Okay.
I was going to be 99.9. You'd have to figure out what that 0.1 was. So I'll go to 100.
Perfect.
All right, all in favor of the motion to adopt these goals, please signify by saying aye.
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 And hearing none opposed, that's it. You had a bullet point there discussing what success and investment strategies would look like. Do folks feel like we've had that discussion? That we don't need a percentage and we have our, you feel directed?
I have clear direction.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. And typically at this point, we might take a little break, but I think we can power through this, folks. What do you think?
I would concur.
All right. I will start with the mayor's report, and I will say that it has been an absolute pleasure and honor these last couple of weeks to go out and be in our community a lot. You know, we know there's a lot of tough things going on, but I think June being Pride Month and being able to celebrate people in our community, our Pride Festival was a huge success. And I think really having people, and I believe we all got an email, right? People feeling welcome and feeling that sense of belonging. We are hoping to create as much as we can as a city, a jurisdiction, but the people in it, I just really appreciate that. And last night we had the Juneteenth event. Many cities, our school district are starting to celebrate Juneteenth as a state and federal holiday, which, as I mentioned last night, I am sort of hard to admit that Texas led us in that effort and has been celebrating as a state holiday for 40 years, for God's sake. So about time we got up, our Carol McKeel again had some thought-provoking speakers and kind of a neat format. We sat on the stage of the amphitheater, so it was a really intimate conversation. Lawn chairs, folks huddled against the wind, but really sort of a neat event. Councilor Carey was there as well and thought there were some great discussions, so appreciate that. And we did successfully graduate another class, the class of 2023 from both Central High School and Western Oregon State University. And if you think about it, a traditional four-year student would have been a freshman in the spring of 2020. They took sort of we're going to go to spring break early, and then spring break is never going to end. You will be on break for the rest of the school year. And so I have been truly inspired by the students who graduated this year as to what they really went through. And I will just tell you, I got a chance to hear some of the commencement speakers in person at Western, but their speeches were recorded and they are available. Amazing students, and talking about how it's okay not to be okay. They have experienced such a different environment than certainly any of us did, but I really recommend that you go out and try to find those speeches and listen to them. I think it gives you hope and it should inspire all of us how to carry forward based on what these incredible young people are doing. And some older people too. I was fortunate to shake the hand of every graduating Western student, supposedly 790 of them. And one woman looked a little closer to my age than the typical student. When I shook her hand, she said, well, it only took 35 years. So it's education is.
But she did it.
Great thing. She did it. She was proud. In fact, in our neighborhood, a woman who's 70 said she had to drop out of school to help when her father died, and she had to go home and take care of the family business. And at 70, she decided to go back and get her degree because it was one thing she just hadn't completed. So really, really cool stuff this time of year. Proud to be a part of this community that celebrates that. So that's what I've been doing. Let's see. We have coming up a ribbon cutting at Salem Health also. West Valley Hospital did an expansion. And so they will be dedicating that coming up, which is going to be really a great help for our community to have more beds available for folks in Dallas rather than going.
They had 6. They've got a lot more now.
How many do they have?
I can't remember the number.
West
You
Valley
would.
Foundation board member Oberst.
It is significant, 10, 12, something
Thought
like
it
that.
was 12. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's significant.
Yep. Great. All right. Reports of council, boards and commissions. What boards and commission meetings we had going on? Yep. Councilor Salinas Oliveros and Councilor McKeel.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I was not able to go to the Arts and Culture Commission meeting on June 15th. I celebrated my 27th wedding anniversary, and so we are very proud of that. So I did miss that, but I know that on the agenda it was July 4th. Everything was July 4th coming up. So so I'm sure that was discussed. I did attend the PATHS meeting on June 14th in the afternoon. And we went over strategic plan, started working on that, talked about the PATHS website, voted on a logo. There was a very brief update on the meeting of Church at the Park and with the police and fire, pretty much that they met. So there wasn't a lot of detail, and then that was about it. And then there is a community information summit happening tomorrow at Western Oregon University in the Pacific Room, starting at 6:30 and going till 8 o'clock. It is open to the public, and it's a time to converse with different partners, listen to presentations, and then have a conversation with those who are working for our homeless community. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor McKeel, you had
I have the library report.
library board.
They were happy to announce that they are fully staffed. So if you thought the library provided amazing service in the past, it will be even better in the future, which is hard to believe. That's like 110%. The other thing that the library board accepted was their new policy of behavior policy in the library. We had the summer reading challenges kicked off June 13th, will run until August 5th. Lots of kids programming and adults. And don't forget June 21st, tomorrow is the Make Music Day. There's the harp workshop and a 6 p.m. Celtic and Nordic music concert. So go for 30 minutes of music before you go over to Western for about the houseless issue. And that's all I had. I'm trying to think of something really pithy to talk about the vinyl revival and just it's just turning. But it was a success.
All right, others?
Planning Commission met last 2 weeks ago, I guess, and worked with and approved a parking modification for Ron Wilson building. Yeah, over here. They're going to expand a parking lot in the back. Well, get their employees off the street at a higher level. So, good. Good decision.
Help with some traffic safety on Clay that
Yeah.
people always complain they can't see to
Yeah.
pull out of places. Okay, thank you. Any others? All right. That takes us to our city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I don't have that much to add that you've already all reported on. There's been lots of excitement this week about the opening of our skate park, and if you've been near it, you know that it's been that people on bicycles and on boards and on there have been about 100 people a day that or more that have been using our skate park, which is great. We have there will be an official ribbon cutting ceremony in July, so we'll send you a save the date for that soon. I also had a chance last week to be standing in the Public Works parking lot and watching the old skate park be dismantled and travel through the parking lot. So the jokes about duct tape and the other things that were holding it together, I can report are true, and probably none too soon. Right. Have a safe and a really great amenity for our communities, the skate park. Let's see, what else is going on? Our Public Works Director also reported this week that he's working on a scope of work for our transportation system plan. So that's going to be moving forward, and we'll keep you posted. There'll be lots of opportunities to ask for input from our community and for you to give input. Next week, we have scheduled interviews for our RARE volunteer position, and that's resource assistance for rural environment. So we're, if you've heard, yes, we were able to put ourselves in a priority order to have a RARE volunteer help us this coming year. So we'll keep you posted about who comes aboard for that work.
And housing they might need. That's one of our responsibilities. This is a program through the University of Oregon, getting often grad students to come into your community and help with projects from economic community development, climate, different things. But one of the responsibilities of the host city is to try to help find housing for these people while they're in our community for a year.
It's either 9 or 12 months.
Yeah.
Interim manager Hal Schilling assigned a RARE intern to avian population reduction activities as part of, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
That's not part of the scope of work we propose.
No.
My only other report, and I'm going to look at Mr. Cooper one more time to make sure I have this right. There's going to be an unveiling of a peace pole this coming on Thursday, the 22nd at 3 p.m. And is it Minette at Monmouth Recreation Park? So everybody's welcome to come, and
What time was that again?
3 p.m.
Thank you.
So the cool thing about that, we just dedicated one on the campus of Western Oregon University. Several of the student groups got together, and I figured out that is our 4th peace pole in Monmouth Independence. This will be the 5th, and the 2 cities of Monmouth Independence combined have just under 5 square miles of land. So we have 1 per square mile.
Bad.
A good concentration of peace poles.
Yeah.
And my only final note is, in addition to saying welcome to Susie as she joins us as our finance director, most of you know that there's about a month of overlap with Janet and Susie. So you'll be seeing them together as a team in our next, team finance. And we'll be sending you a save the date for a retirement celebration for Ms. Chenard coming up in July 17th. We'll keep you posted. That's all I have.
All right. And council comments or community announcements? Councilor Belts.
I have to add on to what Councilor McKeel said because I'm so intimately involved with Make Music Day, which is tomorrow. It is from 4 to 7. There are posters all over town designed by me. There's a QR code. Scan that QR code. That will tell you who's going to be where because it was sort of a moving target. There's about 16 locations, 16, 17, 18 performers, at Rookies and at Grocery Outlet and up in Independence and all over. And then obviously at the library, they're going to be doing harps, not harmonica harps, but harps, I've been told. So please go out, enjoy it. There's a mariachi band that's going to be in the Independence in front of K Insurance. So go out and enjoy it. Last year it was 95 degrees that day. And so it was very, very hot and not many people got out. So please go out and enjoy it. Next year, because of leap year, it will be on a Friday. So it will be really, really exciting next year. So anyway, just thought I'd share that. Thanks.
Cool. I'm also going to have Phyllis catch us up on the 4th of July activities coming up, because we got several days to celebrate this year. Is that okay?
So just a reminder that you were sent an invitation to an organic frisbee throwing contest to to celebrate what they did 50 years ago during the bid for the Monmouth Independence Winter Olympics. These are not made out of cow poo. They're made out of 3D printing stuff. So it won't be as exciting.
Oh, okay. I might consider it then.
Yeah, it's,
Consider it
these are 21st century cow pies.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
it brought back memories as a child, so I thought, oh, I don't think I'm going to do that again.
So we do have Apple Box Theater performing again this year on Sunday. Just a brief preview of what they're going to be doing on their, is it the 5th, 6th, and 7th, I believe, is when their performances are. We have a band that late afternoon called Silver Lake 66. They have been with us for Music in the Park. And then the next day is the organic frisbee throwing contest. And we have performances by Monmouth Tyco, Marshall Lee's performers, the Ballet Folklorico. We have a trash and fashion show, so make your recycled materials hats. That should be super fun. Then we have the traditional Albany Swing Band and the Willamette Valley Concert Band, who will be performing the Monmouth Independence Winter Olympics anthem. It was written back in the day by Gail Osterhout and Lawrence Lyons. And then just all the usual stuff on the 4th with the parade, the car show, and we will have Infamous Souls, who performed last year after the parade. They were really popular, so we brought them back again. And there's still some spaces available to work the city booth and lots of opportunities to volunteer.
Great. Thank you, Phyllis.
You're welcome.
Woohoo. All right.
Get my discus
Get your disc. I know it, right? Woo.
You know, the comment that I have, and we got more comment tonight relative to the micro shelter. We've had a lot of comment, and we should have made it a point, and I think, Marty, you did, though, I guess, now that I think about it, to thank them and let them know that we're gathering all of that written comment, and it's very much appreciated. Little disappointing to hear the status of the whatever the bill was, 3395, but I guess we'll just deal with that as it comes. With the groups that are involved, the church at the park, the Mid-Willamette Valley, and I've forgotten all the acronyms, Homeless Alliance, the Community Action Group, there's probably, I think, one more.
That's really it. Fulton County's Family Community Outreach would provide the wraparound services at the shelter.
The thing that I hope is happening is I hope, and I say that, and at the same time I doubt that it is, that those people, all those groups are scouring rural Polk County for another option. This is obviously an unpopular option, at least based on the public testimony. We may approve it in the end if we get the chance. Who knows? But it's contentious, and so I'd like to know where Commissioner Gordon is in his recruitment of other sites. I'd like to know where the City of Independence is. The City of Dallas, have they done any kind of a scour at all? I feel like it's all being laid on the good intentions of Christ Church. They sort of step forward. Now they run the risk of getting caught up in this maelstrom that's going on, and they just sort of, and just step forward and let's find out about this. And then all of a sudden they're catching all kinds of hell. There ought to be people in positions of leadership that are on that group outside of the city of Monmouth that are looking for and recruiting alternate sites should this one not work.
I think Marty can address a little bit of that.
I will say that the partners you named have reviewed and done due diligence on other sites. And I think we're trying, I'm speaking as though Monmouth is one of those partners because we are, we're part of the Homeless Alliance and we're on the Paths group. I have spoken with Commissioner Gordon, and I know that he and the folks at Church at the Park, who are the ones who received the grant to do this rapid rehousing, know that they need to find a willing partner to site a micro housing shelter. And if this site doesn't work out, that they'll need to find another one. And so I think that they're waiting to see what this decision holds, but know that I would say, acknowledging, Councilor Carey, what you said about how contentious this issue is shaping up, just even without a proposal or an application received yet, that another site might need to be found. And so the partners you named are having a conversation about how other sites can be researched and found. I think we're waiting to see what happens with the Christchurch decision once their board makes a decision.
I feel like that.
And I don't think they started here. I believe they started in Dallas, being the larger city, right? Particularly looking at the numbers and the point in time count, knowing Falls City has the highest need. Falls City doesn't have the services that are required, even in the super siting legislation, to do this. So I know that all communities have been contacted, and yes, Christchurch was the willing partner that they invested the time in to start this work.
Yeah, I feel like the city of Monmouth has and will, pursue this, look at this carefully and analyze it with, due diligence. We've already put a lot of work in. Marty has. I just hope that other cities, other entities aren't just sitting back and say, well, Monmouth will handle this. And if not, then I guess we'll get on it. People need to be a little aggressive. Everybody stipulates this is an issue that we need to deal with. But so everybody needs to be active on it. And wherever it comes down, if it comes down here on, Stadium and Clay, then that's fine. But others need to be beating the bushes, and there needs to be some leadership on other entities.
I would say this, and I say this when we hear this from some of the speakers too. I think we all wish this was different. I think we wish it had started differently, it had progressed differently. There were potentially much clearer criteria for making a decision. I think we all wish and hope, but wishes and hopes isn't going to get it. Other people were approached, other jurisdictions, I believe, have likely said, don't even ask, don't do this, right? And they have not found willing partners in other places. That's what this comes down to. So we can all wish and hope. We can be asked, hey, be on our side. You've got to help us here. We have to act within the boundaries of the application process. And we do believe now it is unlikely to be a land use process, as we know. For one thing, this is a reaction to a declared emergency that has to be dealt with under those terms. And We will do the due diligence we need to do within the constraints we are given. And I really appreciate Lane has been very active with us, not only with his knowledge of the law, but also his knowledge of the legislative process and his knowledge of how these things might be affected or how we're going to help review this application. And again, I've got the provisions right here in the new law that, refers repeatedly to that all these definitions that are in the statewide plan and land use planning goals are not to be considered. So we can't, right? That's wishful and hopeful that we will take those things into consideration. But if we receive an application under this, it specifically says we can't. It puts us in a very difficult position, but it would put Dallas or Independence or anyone else. And other cities have been through this process.
That's true. And I would say, just going back to your original point, Councilor Carey, I know that other cities in our region were approached. I know that where sites have been recommended, Polk County and Church of the Park have gone through processes to understand whether it would meet the needs and whether there are willing partners there. So that'll continue.
Yeah.
Well, and I think one thing, reading the legislation that hasn't come up, a lot of people have asked about Polk County. The legislation specifies that it has to be within an urban growth boundary or rural residential zone. Well, Polk County is neither of those. Polk County Fairgrounds is neither of those things.
Rick Rail's got to have a big urban.
They're big urban growth boundary. They're not even a city. So, they're right. Lots of people have lots of great ideas, and it would be lovely if other people would come forward and say, "You're right. An established low density residential neighborhood near a university is not ideal." But that is not one of the criteria in the
Are there any appeal processes in that, waiver processes in that legislation?
The only appeal process is through a circuit court.
And that would be
Post-decision.
post-decision.
Correct.
In other words, you couldn't get a ruling on that urban growth boundary deal.
No, and I think the effort that the mayor, and again, thanks to Lane Shetterly for helping. I mean, we were also hoping perhaps through the legislative process that we could get some clarification of this criteria. And it's now moving, or we didn't think it was moving at all, and now it's moving quickly that the legislature's back in session, that the Senate's back, that we could get some clarification or modification to the criteria so that we'd have either the ability to condition what happened or what would happen, or some leverage at a local level.
You said it passed out of Joint Ways and Means. Has it gone through the House?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been to the House floor, been to Joint Ways and Means. It now goes directly to the Senate floor, which is not a place for public hearings. And I just want to answer your question a little bit about the writ of review, it's called, which is the only appeal process. It is within 60 days of the city's decision. Applicant or intervening parties can appeal that decision by filing with Polk County Circuit Court. If the city loses, depending on which way the decision goes, the applicants or the intervening parties shall be awarded attorney's fees. So this could get very expensive, right?
If I'm sorry. So I think what I've heard in a lot of people's fear and concern is a very, very narrow band of understanding who the houseless population is. And it's disappointing in that there isn't a better, people aren't more informed. And I actually learned so much when I joined the Youth Houseless organization out of Salem with the Mid-Willamette Valley. And I was struck with the number of people who are just a series of bad luck wind up without a house. And unfortunately, when we talk about houselessness, what we're talking about are those ones that are in the newspaper or the ones that are causing difficulties with their own mental health difficulties. And so it looks really frightening. And that's not all the houseless people. And there's a meeting tomorrow night, and I'm hoping the meeting at Western, which is the Houseless Summit, I think it's called, can help people understand who the people are who are winding up without a home or without a house to live in. And so, and with that, then I think it could alleviate some of the fear that they have of who the people are. Because right now it's just like they all must be criminals, or they can't deal with reality. And that's not necessarily the full understanding of who the people are.
And who they might be versus who will be served at this shelter, which, Church of the Park is answering, and I'm sure that will come up tomorrow night. And I think, as Rebecca reported, the summit is not just about micro shelters. It's not necessarily even a reaction to micro shelters. The county hosting this and the paths, all those discussions, right, are about what is that full range of issues and what are some possible solutions. I think you know a little bit about the format there.
Yes, I think that, and I hope Counselor Salinas Oliveros will add to this if you have anything else about it. But the first 45 minutes is meant to be a presentation about the broader context of what people experiencing homelessness in Polk County, what does the PIT count say? What's the state of also everything that we talked about earlier, the governor's declaration of emergency, the funding that has flowed to the counties, to counties and organizations to be able to address this. And then all of the providers who are providing social services and housing resources to people experiencing homelessness will be there in a tabling event for the second part of the event, so that the learning, Councilor McKeel, that you just outlined can hopefully happen. So it's really meant to set the broader context for what's happening around housing resources generally and people experiencing homelessness also.
Hopefully that they can have a good conversation. Counselor Salinas Oliveros.
Oh, no, I just wanted to thank Ms. Wine for that explanation, and that's pretty much what it is going to happen tomorrow. And going back to what Counselor Carey was saying, and kind of like we all wish it would be differently, like this summit, frankly, it should have happened a lot sooner. And it's kind of like everything's coming backwards. And I guess that's where the frustration is. Because honestly, I don't even know how many people are going to show up tomorrow to learn because of everything that's happening. So, hopefully they have a good turnout and open and willingness type of listening. But that's unfortunate that it's happening this late.
There was a chat question where
I can answer
Yeah.
the question.
Yeah, Gail Oberst, who is a reporter with the Itemized Observer, asking about the summit. Marty's got that information. Gail.
So it's tomorrow, June 21st. It starts at 6:30 p.m. in the Pacific Room at Western Oregon University's Warner University Center.
Put on by PATS, the homeless group
Partners
that
Alliance
we
for
formed
Justice.
and received state money to conduct pilot programming.
So before I'm assuming yes, I would just like to read the land acknowledgement. Monmouth, Oregon is located within the traditional homeland of the Luckiamute Band of Kalapuya. Following the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855, Kalapuya people were forcibly removed to the reservations in Western Oregon. today living descendants of these people are part of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians. And I would just like to add that the people today are continuing to contribute to our overarching community.
All right. With that, we don't have a meeting the first week of July. Our next meeting will be on the 18th of July. So lots of activities and fun in between that. And I would entertain.
So that's to honor my birthday on the 1st of July. Is that why we're taking the week off?
Oh, yes,
Perfect.
it's all you,
Always.
it's all you, Counselor.
Always.
It's 65. It's a good round number. you know.
Ooh.
So there you go. I would move adjournment.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, everybody, for going without a break tonight.